Lou Marzellis from the Goldendale Sentinel, and we've invited candidates Chris Corry and Sasha Bentley to join us for a conversation here, so we'll just get right into it.
Sounds good.
Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're very busy people. We've got a lot going on.
Just a little bit, but thanks for having us.
Sure. My first question is just, did you have anything you'd like to say in the way of an opening statement? And go ahead and start with you, Chris.
Sure. Well, first of all, let me introduce myself. My name's Chris Corry. I'm running for the State House of Representatives here in the 14th. And I am running because I see a need for fair representation in Central Washington issues in Olympia. I'm a little bit about my background. My wife was born and raised in the Yakima Valley. We moved back 6 years ago. It's a place where we love raising our kids. It's a dream place for us to live and work. I'm a local businessman. I've worked in the insurance industry since graduating college in 2004. My concerns going forward are working to ensure that families in Central Washington keep more of the money they earn, and that businesses are allowed to remain independent and economically free so that they can help families keep more of that money and provide for our local economy. Central Washington's a great place to live. It's a very unique place in our state. It's driven on a lot of the ideals and principles of our Constitution and individualism, and we like that. I love the small communities. I love the fact that people care for each other here. It's nice to know that when you go out, you're going to see people you know, and there's an accountability to that I really enjoy. So I'm looking forward to answering your questions, talking about the issues, and hopefully representing everyone in Olympia and fighting for Central Washington.
Thank you. Sasha?
Yeah, so my name's Sasha Bentley, running in 14, Position 1, and I live in White Salmon. I've lived there for a few years now, and I've just, ever since been there, dived into the community and community involvement, and it's kind of stretched countywide as well. So I was chair of the county Democrats last year. I'm still on the leadership team of the Columbia Gorge Women's Action Network, focusing on voter registration and just get out the vote efforts. And I am running because we deserve a strong voice and someone who will bring the policies and investments that we need here. I agree that rural Washington is not receiving the resources it needs, and I think that that's because we haven't elected someone that can get it done. And so I've been campaigning for almost the whole year. I've held listening tours, meet and greets, town halls. I've knocked on thousands of doors, just listening to people, talking to them. For Klickitat County, there's, housing and education and healthcare and all these issues that I'm hearing at the doors, and I'm ready to represent them in our best interests and our values. And yeah, thank you for giving us this opportunity to speak. There aren't many, so it's great, and for sharing with your readers too, this choice that they have.
And I appreciate your taking the time to be here. So you kind of got into the background and why you decided to run. Let me ask about this is a seat that's long been held by a single person for many years, and arguably a very popular representative for a long time. Do you see something? Let me go back to your comment, Sasha, and I'll start the questioning with you on this one. So you said you felt it was time to to elect a representative who could address some of these core concerns. In your mind, does that mean that there has been a gap? There's been some concerns that have not been addressed up to this time?
Oh yeah, definitely. Our communities are struggling. People are focused on their day-to-day needs. They're working paycheck to paycheck, and they're not receiving the support they need, including places like mental health resources. They need more resources as well. So I did file before Norm retired, but I was never running against Norm, and I'm not the person to run against anything. We need to start running for something. So I think I've heard so many good things about him. A lot of people are disappointed to lose, a more moderate Republican that works across the aisle. And so I am just, I want to continue that part of it, of bringing us together and focusing on our issues. He also always responded to my emails personally. I love that about him, and that's the kind of representative I will be too. So, just that he kept in touch with his constituents that were in touch with him is really inspiring.
Okay. Chris?
Yeah, so obviously Norm has what I would consider a very good legacy for Central Washington. He's done some really good things for our communities. Notably, his leadership in bringing PNWU, the Medical University, to Yakima. I think that was a great thing for the region. I think it was a great thing for the state, and it comes at a needed time when we need to get more doctors out in the field for medical care. Norm was a statesman. I mean, he had did a lot of great things, and I'm happy that he's supporting me and behind me in my candidacy. I think we've got a lot of work to do over in Olympia, and I think Norm and the entire team from the 14th has worked tirelessly for this area. I'm just going over to help continue that voice and talk about the family needs and the business needs for our communities.
Okay. Let me ask about the longevity of time for each of you, because it has come up when people started to hear that we were going to have this editorial discussion. We got several emails related to both of you of concerns that they would like to bring up, and I'm not going to address all of them because we have our own questions that we'd like to keep. But one point that I did want to bring up is the longevity that you had, each of you, in the area, and how that you feel that benefits or perhaps might provide some challenge for you. Given your respective times in the district, you feel you're largely in touch with district issues. And as I understand it, correct me if I'm mistaken, you're relatively new to the area. Your business backgrounds have been chiefly out of the area.
Not well. So we've lived here just shy of 6 years.
Okay.
In
Yakima.
In Yakima. My wife was born and raised here, and we came back because we were looking for that place that we could raise our family and build the rest of our lives. And I think that my experience out of the area will help the district.
How so?
And I talk about this in some different campaign areas, but I think one of them is living in California. I was relatively quickly out of college, offered a position down there, and my wife and I moved down there before we got married and married shortly after. My wife and I both had great jobs down there, but we were struggling to make it. I mean, from buying a house to doing all the things we wanted to do to build our life together and have children, it was impossible to do, and that's because California is overtaxed and overregulated. A starter home down there was out of control pricing. The property taxes on a starter home in California were close on to $1,000 a month in Orange County for a starter home. That didn't include the payroll tax, the sales tax, which is higher than here. So everything, in our opinion, was set against people growing and being able to invest in their community. So a while back we said, where do we want to live? Someplace that's going to provide good economic opportunity for us. And my suggestion was Yakima. We had spent a lot of time up here. My wife's entire family's here. I have a lot of family on the west side of the state, and it was probably the smartest decision we've ever made. So I think from a how will this benefit the district, I've seen what California does, and I want to make sure that we don't do that in Washington.
Okay. And by the way, I want to make it clear, just from an editorial, philosophical perspective, I don't believe in ambush journalism, so I'm not bringing up. I'm never going to bring up a question that's meant to put you on any defensive or ambush or anything. If anything, I want to make sure that you both have the opportunity to clarify some potential misconceptions or amplify some perceptions that were accurate. So that's where I'm going with that.
So do I.
Please.
Okay. So when I first moved to this area, actually I grew up in different states, and I had moved around a lot growing up, so I was looking for that place to put down my roots as well and call home. And I found an amazing community in White Salmon, and after I lived there for a while, I expanded my community organizing county-wide. So I have a lot of relationships with the county officials.
And how long have you been in White Salmon?
So it was February 2016 was when so it's almost 3 years in February.
And where were you before that?
Well, a lot of places. We were in Portland first because we wanted to be out here, but we didn't know if there was jobs out here. My husband's a mechanical engineer. We didn't actually know about in situ and some of the drone aerospace work out here. So we stopped there, said, okay, let's try to save money so we can move out to our dream, place. And then before that, we were traveling a little bit, traveling Australia, Southeast Asia, and before that, we were in Seattle for almost a decade, where he was working at Boeing and I was working in the legal field. So yeah, we were looking for that more rural area to call home, And like I said, I've been getting to know, obviously, the county. I had a nonprofit that was countywide where, I met all the officials and community members and things like that. But also, as soon as I started my campaign, I've been learning about the district, and I've been preparing to start work on day one. So I've put more than 18,000 miles on my car. I've knocked personally on at least 2,000 doors, let alone my volunteers and things like that. So I've used this whole year, because I started in late February, to be ready and to hear from the people directly about what the issues that are affecting them and their city and their county and their state, so I can represent them on day one. And again, it's that civic engagement. So I want to go back to them next year and say, hey, this is what I did. So this will continue after.
Okay. So let me address some of the press releases that have come from your campaign chiefly about the very point of, you seem to see the press releases that we get from you. You're kind of everywhere. You're ubiquitous throughout the county, and you've raised a concern about Chris, by comparison, not apparently being as around the county and as visible. Am I correct in that perception?
So the specific thing has been about the debates.
Okay.
And then there have been a lot of letters to the editor about comparing our websites to see what solutions and ideas does he actually have compared to mine. So that, I don't know if you're combining them all, but my press releases have been specifically about the debates.
Debates, okay.
Yeah.
Then it's letters, the emails that we've been getting too. So let's talk about that.
Sure.
Throw it back to you.
Yeah, a couple things. One, when it came to the debates, I know Sasha and I talked about doing some additional ones, and when we looked at the amount of forums we had together, the fundamental idea was for voters to get to hear our ideas, and forums are a great place for that. I was at Washougal last week. I was at Stevenson on Wednesday. We'll be in Underwood next week. We've got one in Goldendale in 2 weeks. There's several coming up in Yakima. Those were great times to connect with people. They're open to the public, they're nonpartisan, they're cross lines, and I thought they were ample opportunity for people to hear from us. I, like my opponent, am out doorbelling. As far as being in this district, I think I announced my campaign in April, and I put 15,000 miles on my car. I've been up and down this district. As a matter of fact, some residents were concerned that I might move here. And I've told them that based on the view of Mount Adams alone. But no, I've been all over. I'm working, and nobody's going to doubt that we're working hard. I would never accuse my opponent of not working hard. We both care deeply about this district. We have different methodologies for how we, seek to address problems and issues. So I guess I would say I'm everywhere. You can talk to a lot of people. I've been holding a lot of meetings. I've been very active. I've been doorbelling. We've been doing all those things. I guess when it comes to a website, my website talks about my principles and talks about how to find me and talk about issues. I would argue that Sasha's solutions on her webpage aren't solutions, they're ideas. And I have concerns about some of them. We can discuss them, and I think we do in different areas. A lot of them coming to funding and how do you pay for certain things. But at the end of the day, I've also had a lot of letters to the editors talking about my support for families, for law enforcement, for different community organizations. So I guess that would be my answer on that piece.
Okay. So, and it's still your perception that there has not been the responsiveness for debates that you would prefer? Am I correct in that?
So I challenged him to 3 debates. He immediately accepted. Then the second time it was 1 in Yakima is enough. Then I sent him, okay, let's do that. Here's, proposed format, things like that. Then it was like, well, let me see if I can get Gina to come on board. And let's make it a LD14 thing. And, okay. And then it came back, no. And then he sent a whole list of, 15 forums saying, these are enough. That was kind of the last I heard from him. So.
And that was not satisfactory to you?
I can't make every forum, unfortunately. That's one reason, is that a debate, we could pick a date where we're both going to be there. I definitely agree that Yakima is lacking in forums, so if we just picked one at this point, Yakima would be it. And debates are more in-depth like this, opportunity to get into the issues and see the candidates side by side. This is an open position, and we should stand up for what we believe because we are new to this. And debates also have a moderator who can fact check. So these are all different from forums. Forums, you get a couple minutes to intro. You might get a couple questions. At Stevenson, we got one question that was, and then, so it's different. But I'm going to make every forum I can because I'm passionate about civic engagement and I want those voters that show up to hear from me. But debates are, in my opinion, a whole different thing.
Do you agree with that, Chris?
I disagree. I mean, I do think we only got one question in Stevenson, which was unfortunate. I had more in Underwood. I know you had a conflict that night. Or Washougal, excuse me. Underwood's next week. There's a lot, so they're hard to keep track of.
And you have something tonight, too.
And I don't think there's one this evening.
Oh, I'm thinking, sorry. Different candidate.
Anyways, so we, and then after we had talked about the Yakima one, both the League of Women's Voters of Yakima and Forward Yakima Initiative both announced candidate forums in Yakima. So I think we've given, and there's also a forum in Zilla. There's plenty of opportunities to meet with voters at those public forums, again, nonpartisan. I think that forum and debate is just a small divergence in words, in my opinion. I think that the ones I've been at, there's been questions and answers back and forth. And I think it's great for voters to get to hear the issues from us. So.
Okay. And that's another reason why we appreciate your taking the time to do something like this. And we appreciate Home Telephone Company videotaping. And this will be on YouTube, so
awesome.
People can, and we'll put the link up there so people can see this. So let's move on to a different topic here. Let me get the essential digest from you. You got, say, 3 to 5 key issues facing the county that Ready, Set, Go, you can enumerate and go into, and why are they your top picks for those key issues, and it's a two-parter. One is the issues, and second is what are your practical plans for how to address those. So we'll leave it open. Which of you would like to go first?
Well, the 3 issues that I hear at the doors and talking to people are education, housing, and healthcare. So specific to Klickitat County, education and housing can go hand in hand in a way because in White Salmon School District, they have hired teachers who have had to turn down the job because they couldn't find an affordable place to live. So those cover those. Healthcare, our county was one of 2 counties last year to almost not find a healthcare insurance company. That's devastating to me, and I know to the people of this county. So some things that we can do. Healthcare, I would love to see more in community-based solutions and also mental health. Just, again, we need more resources into these prevention opportunities so we don't have problems later down the line. For education, there are some fixes to McCleary that need to occur. The legislature had years to do this. They waited till the last minute, and the fix was not a fix. And we've seen divisions between teachers and school districts. So not only the policy fix needs to happen, but I want to bring people back together so we can, get past the difficult negotiations and things that the teachers and the school boards, are going through. And then housing, I believe we have a lot of support for, shelters and things like that. So I would like to look at the people kind of left behind that still have the low wages but the high rents. We can look into multi-family zoning and look into higher density, look into public-private partnerships so we can get construction going faster. But of course, in some areas of this district, you deal with the National Scenic Area and things like that. So you need someone who understands the area and also has already developed relationships with our elected officials and things like that.
Okay. So what I'd like to do is get that snapshot first, and then I'll give you each an opportunity to address the suggestions that each of you made.
Sure.
So, go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple things. First and foremost, I believe McCleary has left a lot of schools in our district behind, and we do need a fix to that. I think that there was, a real divide between administrations and teachers. And I think part of that divide was that it was not very well communicated how we were going to be moving forward with this, with the levy swap and the monies changing over from more local to more state. So what I would propose is we move back to statewide salary planning.
So you're addressing education as one of the
Education,
key
yes.
issues.
Education
Okay.
is a key issue, specifically McCleary. I would propose moving back to statewide pay scaling with regionalization and looking at capping percentage of growth. Now, I know teachers were left behind for a number of years, either due to the recession or whatnot, and we want to make sure they're equitable. But I know as a parent and a person who's been active with our administration, trying to focus on making sure our school district for our children is running as efficiently and as well as possible. The administration wasn't trying to deny teachers pay raises. They just wanted to make sure that they weren't having to lay other people off in order to do that. And they also wanted to make sure that down the road those funds would still be there. So we need to provide a path of clarity for them and consistency. And that's nonpartisan. That's not a Republican or Democrat thing. That's just the right thing to do. The state said we're taking over, so we need to figure out how we can do that while giving school boards and school administrators the ability to plan and budget for their children.
Okay.
I think another big issue, especially down in this part of the district, is forest management. The government has gotten in a way and slowed progress down in a lot of areas, whether it's DNR and their missed role in fiduciary responsibility for public trust lands, to preventing responsible forest practices. There's a great way we can both protect the environment and work for private industry and the benefit of people by allowing managed timber, cutting and replanting. It actually can have a really good negative carbon footprint. The University of Washington's done a study showing that, and that can help in the long run with reducing our carbon footprint. So forest management, that's great for jobs, that's great for industry down here in Klickitat and Skamania, and I'd love to see the state move towards allowing better use of private lands than public trust lands. And then housing. I agree that housing is a big concern. The biggest issue I see when it comes to housing is GMA and government involvement. They restrict growth and they add a lot of taxes and fees to building a home.
For those who may not know what GMA is.
Growth Management Act.
Okay.
So when it comes to housing, and I can speak specifically to Yakima, was one of the areas we were looking at. They said on average it was 20 to 30% of the cost of a new home is in taxes and fees. That gets passed directly on to the buyer, and it creates another barrier to affordable entry and affordable housing. I agree with Sasha that we do need to look at multifamily. That's a great affordable way to have people enter the home ownership and to start with their first place. So those are three areas that I would look at.
Okay. So you have a little bit, some consensus and a little bit of divergence.
Sure.
So let's start with you. What's your take on what Sasha has suggested for the issues that she cited, and then I'll give you the same opportunity to address for Chris.
The biggest thing is I get concerned about the heavy-handedness of government and how the government plans on doing X, Y, and Z. So I'm okay with spending funds, but you have to do it in a manner that's fiscally responsible. I think one of the areas we probably would agree on is decentralizing the current state of our mental health system between eastern and western states. I would look to more promoting private companies handling that.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow. Between eastern and western states?
Hospitals.
I got it.
Sorry,
Okay.
my apologies. I figured we were trying to keep it to an hour, so I guess I
Sure.
was just leaving out words at random.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's all right.
So with Eastern and Western States Hospital, I think a more regional approach would be better for people in care and for families that have family members in care. So that's one area I would look at. And I don't think it necessarily needs to be a big operation of the state of Washington. I think that we have nonprofits and private companies that can do that more efficiently and better. So a lot of it comes down to what is the role of the government in promoting or supporting these different initiatives.
All right. So Sasha mentioned specifics on education, healthcare, and housing. Did any of those strike you as things that you would take issue with in terms of the suggestions that she had for them?
With housing, I think, again, I don't want to build a bunch of government housing. I don't think that's the solution. I think the role would be reducing the impact of different restrictions on growth that have hurt multifamily and single-family homes.
Okay. Did you mention subsidized housing? Okay. So
that was maybe I misunderstood, but that was the...
Okay. So what's your take on what he suggested?
So the first issue is McCleary, and he talked about communication. And I mean, I haven't personally received that much communication from him. So I mean, I just don't know how much he's going to really be able to give the time and effort in this position that I will be able to. And
How
you know,
so?
well, he's going to keep his clients, and he has a full-time job. He's assured them that he won't be changing anything really.
But that would not impact your time during the actual legislative session, would it?
No, this would be the first time I knew she was part of my conversations with my employer. But no, well, you just said that you just made assumptions to my...
No, I saw something.
Okay.
I saw a video.
Okay, well, I will tell you that my employment has no issue with this. I will be in the legislature from January until whenever the special session ends. We have a great account management team that handles work. And this is a part-time legislature I don't see the need to give up another job when you're doing this. When I'm there serving, I'm working 110% for the district. And even when we're not in session, I'll continue to do so.
Okay.
But many legislators have kept their careers, and that doesn't seem to be an issue.
All right, well, let me let you continue.
Well, yeah, in the same video, he said the less time I spend in Olympia, the better for everyone. So that I take into it all, and just, well, how is he going to really communicate with us?
I'll let you come back and address that.
Sure, no worries.
How much, so that was just McCleary, because that's all he said. They weren't communicating, and I agree with that. They weren't, but how is he going to be different? I think I've proven how I'm going to be. For the forestry, I think that the state, from actually what I've heard from people in Skamania, including county commissioners, it's the federal government that's leaving us behind a bit. So I would like to be that representative who is in communication and has personal relationships with local government all the way up to federal, so we receive those resources. And LD14 has a special district. We have 2 congressional representatives that I can work with for that. For housing, I totally understand that we have to plan long term, and sometimes that does create issues for short term. So I would love to, somehow be that representative to allow for that long term plan. But we need the short term. It needs to be malleable. It needs to be flexible to the needs, the current needs of the people. So if there are ways to, keep our long-term plan, because that's very important. We can't just forget about the future. And then the taxes and fees he mentioned for housing, I'm pretty sure a lot of those pay for affordable housing. So I would be curious of where he would find the money for affordable housing if he was going to lower those taxes and fees. I agree. I don't like all the taxes we put on things and fees we put on things, but we have a revenue issue, and so that's how we do it, to pay for things like affordable housing that we need. We don't want people on the street, and housing is one of those that if a person has housing, they can deal with other issues that they have. So I think those were the only issues that I was going to respond to.
Okay, and we'll throw it back to you.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think Washington State has a revenue issue. We have one of the largest budgets we've ever had. Actually, we have the largest budget we've ever had. We're also projected to have another $700 million in additional revenues above our forecast. So we're doing well revenue-wise, it's spending-wise. A lot of those taxes and fees don't go anywhere near affordable housing. A lot of them go to fight a myriad of other things, supposedly, but they kind of get lost in either state and local coffers for other pet projects. How that affects affordable housing is when you have to pay more for your house, it becomes less affordable. My comments, I'm not sure which video interview she's referring to about spending less time in Olympia.
Well, we'll give you time to address that.
Which video interview is that?
Christian TV Yakima or something like
Okay.
that.
So my comment there was basically tongue-in-cheek, saying the less time lawmakers spend over there, the less they can, disrupt our lives over here. It had nothing to do with me saying I couldn't be over there to serve. So, just for context of that. Again, everybody who goes over there is a civic servant. They all have families, they all have jobs, but they're all dedicated to working over there. I'm not any different. I'm not running for a career change, I'm running to serve. I've got business background, and I plan on keeping my business when I'm not in session, and I think most legislators do that. The communication I referred to with McCleary is more along providing guidelines and terms so that teachers and administration can know what's expected of them and what they can expect in terms of funding. I don't think we want to go back to the local levy system, but we do need to bring up schools that lost out in this. We need to find a way to fix the budget shortfalls that we're going to see if we don't make changes to McCleary.
Okay. Is there anything that you wanted to readdress regarding perception of the video or anything like that at this point?
No, you know, I just watched the video and I
Okay.
took what I took from it. And the taxes and fees, I'm pretty sure we raised like an estate fee this year or this last year specifically to pay for affordable housing. So I just wanted to say that although maybe not all the taxes and fees go back into housing, I know some do. So.
Okay. And by the way, at any point, we have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes left. If there's any point at which you feel I've cut you off or not giving you ample time to address something that the other said, feel free to let me know.
Sure.
Thanks.
I want to make sure you get everything that you need
Thank you.
covered, both of you. So, but let me, since you raised that point, let me ask you, you do believe that the state has a revenue problem?
So I mean, if we're going to talk taxes, we have the worst tax system in the country. The bottom 20% pays 7 times more than the top. So not only that, we're not paying our fair share across the board, but there's also over 7, or at least over 600 tax breaks for corporations and billionaires that they have that they put in there to give themselves kind of a handout, I think. So I would love to just remove those because, for example, Boeing received $200-something million tax break, but they laid off 6,000 people. So that's not the kind of incentive I want to give to corporations. I definitely want to give incentive to corporations. My husband worked for Boeing. When they gave pensions, you know, corporations can be really great, but we shouldn't reward them for losing Washington jobs.
Okay. I'm having a little trouble following how that constitutes a revenue problem for the state. Then.
Well, we have a revenue problem because of our tax system. So if our tax system, if our tax system was created more fairly, which would mean I would love to lower property taxes and even the sales tax. So to make it that everyone is paying their fair share, there would be plenty of revenue that we could turn into investments into our communities.
Okay. What is the, don't we also have a record budget projected for the state coming up?
That's what Chris mentioned.
Okay.
But comparing ourselves to previous years is different than,
That's true.
yeah, saying what our potential is.
All right. And your contention is, did I understand you to say it's not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem? Or?
It's not that the state is short money. We've got plenty of money. It's, you know, are we spending it in the right areas? I mean, we look at one area. You look at marijuana taxes, which I know marijuana is highly controversial for both sides, both for and against it. And I say the amount of money that's being poured into our state coffers from this, I would like to see more of it go back to help local communities. And I'm sure Sasha would agree with me on that. I mean, that just makes sense from a fiscal standpoint. We've got all these different law enforcement agencies that are having to enforce legalized marijuana, and they're being asked to take up a lot of additional responsibility, and the money just really isn't coming from the state.
Because of allocation.
Yeah, a lot of it goes, I think 30 some odd percent now goes to the general fund. You've got a different variety of, so the universities take a portion of it for research. There's some that goes to the Department of Health. Some is allocated back to counties, but it's a minuscule amount compared to the amount of revenue they're actually collecting.
Okay. So let me ask this. You've both talked in various ways indirectly to the diversity of this district. It ranges from a fair-sized metropolitan area to tiny little villages hidden in the trees. So what does it take to adequately represent the diversity of this district? And what makes you feel you've got what it takes to do that? We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it requires someone who's willing to do the work and willing to go into those communities and go to the people's doors or hold an event that the people can come to and not only listen to the work I've done so I can be accountable for the work I've done, but also the problems that they actually face. I think that because of the diversity of issues in this district, we need a representative who is willing to work overtime. And because we've been left behind for decades, we have a lot of catching up to do. And I'm ready to do that from day one. I don't know if there's a second part of that question or if I answered.
what makes you feel you're the one to be able to bridge that diversity or to
Right.
address that range
Yeah.
of diversity? And it's interesting that you're from a rural area and you're from the urban area, so it's an interesting
Yeah.
dynamic there.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point because, you know, our rural voice is being left behind in the state, and we need our rural issues heard by urban Democrats or even urban Republicans, but that's why we're being left behind, because they don't understand our issues. So we need to elect someone who not only will force my way in, but I'm a Democrat, so I will actually automatically be in a majority caucus. So I'll be able to bring even more investments here and more attention too. The infrastructure project, that's the clean energy storage, that needs some attention. That needs a representative who's going to say, hey, look at this amazing, along with Sauter, and who's brought Cantwell here. Sauter's doing an amazing job.
The pumped water
yes,
storage.
pump water storage. But we need, a representative who knows about projects like that, or as soon as they learn about them is ready to hit the ground running and make it come to life, make it actually happen.
So, and I'll do the reverse for you. Why should the person in downtown Yakima give you credibility, and then you'll address why should the guy in the village in Skamania, since you're from Yakima. So why should Yakima feel you're on top of their situation?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm on top of anyone's situation, I can do the work. So as long as I am in communication with the people of Yakima, the city of Yakima, and able to understand their issues, I'll be able to get to work. So for me, the first step is being that engaged, active, transparent representative who is going to get out there and actually hear about the issues. I've lived in cities, but you don't have to live in cities to be able to represent city issues as well. And Yakima has a rural, heart. So they have some rural issues as well, water, things like that.
Agriculture.
Yep, exactly. That my, rural voice will be able to bring attention to.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, there's no denying that this is a big district. I would think if you talk to most people in Yakima, they say they're in a small town. Maybe not comparatively to some other towns, but at heart, similar industries, agriculture-based, family-based businesses, a lot of small to medium-sized business, very similar to this entire district. Like Sasha, I've had open houses, town halls. I've been in Stevenson, Carson, Yakima. We've been all over. And I look forward to working with Gina Mossbrucker, who sits here in Goldendale, and we can be a force together to go out and represent the entire district. Obviously, we have a lot of common needs. We have different needs, and I think I will be able to work with the commissioners and the different city councils across the district to advocate for rural Washington.
Okay. Let me ask the point about practicalities. I think this was touched on a little bit before. You mentioned that you had the impression, and correct me if I'm mistaken, that Sasha's ideas about solutions were just that. They were more thoughts than practical plans. You've sounded like you questioned how practical some of Chris's approaches would be. So let's talk about practicality. What does it actually take to ensure that what you have in mind for the betterment of the district is really doable? And for example, have you got what it takes to work across the aisle with the constituencies involved, for the constituencies involved? And we'll start with you, Chris.
Yeah, I think that obviously I have values and principles that I want to uphold, but I definitely don't mind working across the aisle to get things done that are nonpartisan and they're good for the entire district. Doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I'm elected to represent everybody, and I will be an open door and a voice for everyone. We may not always agree on everything, but that doesn't mean we can't work together. I think when you get past kind of the partisan rhetoric, there's a lot of stuff that we agree on, and my goal would be to focus on moving those things forward. I think McCleary is a great example of places where we can have a lot of common ground and build for a solid future for our rural school districts. I think with forest management, we can make sure that we bring in the right people so that we can, address the environmentalist concerns while also addressing the business concerns and looking at the carbon footprint issues. Those are areas where we can get past left and right. So I believe that I will be able to, similar to Norm, work with both sides of the aisle. Obviously, you don't sacrifice your principles or your core values, but you can compromise without doing that.
Without selling your soul.
Yeah.
And
Your words.
On,
Your
on
words.
either side.
Absolutely.
On either side. Let me clarify that.
So,
go
were you
ahead.
following up with that, or do you want me to answer?
Let me just make a note of the question I was going to, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't want to interrupt.
No, that's
Just
all right.
wanna
Go right
follow
ahead.
up. So yeah, I mean, I think I've demonstrated working across the aisle throughout the campaign, and even before that, when I was working in this more conservative district. I also have been able to learn of the values of the district, and we are a more moderate district here, and I definitely represent those values. But not only that, but we need to focus on the issues, and we need to focus on the common ground that we have, because when you talk, rhetoric, we're going to be divided. And I am so done with us being so divided and so partisan. We need to come together so we can really focus on the issues at hand and find that common ground, because there is common ground on every issue, I promise you. The fact is that a big part of this job is to be able to lobby for capital projects, and I'll be able to do that. I'll be able to bring money here. The astronomy center that received money, that's one example of what our legislators can do.
The observatory?
Yes, sorry, the observatory. So just practicality-wise, to answer your question
Yep.
about practicality,
Yep.
I will be able to bring more capital budget projects to this district.
How so?
By being that strong representative, by being in the majority caucus, by actually talking to everyone here and saying what do we actually need, and making sure it happens, seeing it through.
Do I hear an implication that just being part of the majority process kind of expedites processes?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's just reality, and I don't like it. I mean, I think we need to work together, because we don't want to keep the pendulum swinging. We don't want one party in power and the other party to have no voice. I do not want that. I want everyone to have a voice. The fact is, I want to be the voice for the people when they can't be in the room.
So that brings me back to the question I made a note of, which is, how do you see your efficacy if you're elected in a situation where the Republican Party is at a distinct majority and by some accounts at a significant disadvantage in the legislature?
Or you mean as a minority?
How do you make a difference under those circumstances?
Well, again, I think part of it is, working with your colleagues over there on nonpartisan issues. I think Gina, Goldendale native, is a great example of someone who can work with both sides, and I would bring that to the table as well. I don't think that going to Olympia is about bringing money back necessarily. That's maybe part of the job, but I think I would rather make sure that we focus on not taking money out of the district. Let's keep it in here so that people can have more of their own money, and businesses can have more of their own money, so they can make those investments as they see fit. I'm a big believer in community control, and the more dollars we can keep here without having to take them back and then redole out, the better the community is. So I think that would be a big difference for me.
Okay. We kind of touched on that. So I'm hearing from both of you that bipartisan working together in a bipartisan way, so long as it doesn't violate principles or personally held values, is a key concern, a key component of what you would want to bring. Is that accurate to say?
Definitely, and it's one reason I'm running for office, honestly. The partisanship I mentioned. We're too divided, and I think our elected leaders are one of those main roles to bring us together. And so that's what I want to do, not just campaigning, which I have done, bringing people together, but the actual work.
Okay. So, excuse me, let me ask this, because it's a concern for me and for this newspaper, and the way I've been guiding it the last 9 years, is to fulfill a sense of, we're working on a really quick diversion. We're working on a major new project. It's going to be an enormous project for Goldendale and for the county, founded on the notion of integrity literacy, what I call integrity literacy. How do you discern integrity? How do you unpack it, particularly in the arts and culture? So my point being, I'm very concerned, this newspaper is very concerned about integrity, and in the sense of how do you maintain that. This is not a question I had foreseen asking, but since I hear it coming from both of you, I'm going to touch on it. Politics is often a dirty business. They're ranked in most polls just above used car salesmen, politicians. generally speaking, although of course there are good ones, very good people out there, but there is a notion that this particular legislature is fraught with stereotypical wheeling and dealing and party preference. Do you have a sense, for both of you, of bringing a level of integrity and searching for an ideal that may or may not be attainable, but at least is out there? And that's a question that is dear to my heart. So
Sure. I'm not running for a career change. I'm running to serve. And I think that that's an important distinction because my plan, I'm a big fan of term limits. I don't think that politicians need to be there forever. Our founders had this notion of you go, you serve, and then you return to private life. And that was the way it was supposed to be. And we've kind of lost that, I think, in most areas with career politicians. This isn't a career move. I've had people ask me, well, what are your end aspirations? Well, my aspirations are to make Washington a better place. I don't have an eye on a different position somewhere else. I'm going to serve, and when I'm done, I'm going to go back to my private life with my family and be satisfied that, knowing I did what was right for the district. So, to that end, the integrity piece to the core of your question is, I'm going to be making decisions based on, what is good for our district, not what is good for my reelection campaign or what will garner me the most votes. Because win or lose, I go back to, my family and my community, and I still belong there. This isn't my identity. I'm going to serve and work hard like I've done in everything, but my life isn't staked on getting this to go to the next thing.
Okay.
So one of the main reasons I decided to run was I saw the voter turnout, low voter turnout, although this county has really great turnout. I just saw voter apathy, and I contributed that to our representatives and our government in general, and just the people not thinking the government is working for them. So that's why I was like, okay, I can get in government, and I can show them that the government can work for them, because the government is people that you elect, and I'm ready to do that. So for the integrity, I've displayed this through my campaign, that I will be open and transparent. And I will be communicative. I will respond to you as soon as possible. You know that, and not just to you, but to everyone. And I think that's a big part of it. And just the town halls that I'll hold and say, and if there's going to be a controversial vote that I have, I promise I will have hold town halls, and I will stand up for what I did. And I know that there could be some backlash, but we need representatives who will do that, because they need to stand up for us in those places of power, and then they need to come back to us and answer for that. So that's going to be me. And again, I want everyone to realize the government can work for us. We just need to elect the right people to do that.
Okay. Last question I have for you is there anything that I didn't bring up that you wanted to be sure to mention or address?
Wow, that's a good question.
No pressure.
Because I can't anticipate everything that would necessarily be right at the forefront of your mind, so I wanted to be sure that you had the opportunity to address anything that you feel was really important that I might not have brought up. And it doesn't have to be an answer right now.
Well, I've got a couple things, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
There's a couple initiatives out there that I kind of really want to talk about and my position on them. First one is the gun initiative, the 1639. I'm in opposition to that. I do believe that it is a violation of our Second Amendment, and I think that it is not the solution to the problem that it's saying it is. It's being heralded as a safe school solution. It doesn't do anything to make schools safer. One of the things that I've talked about with different people, and I believe I will try to keep that discussion going when I get to the legislature, is finding funds to help schools modernize. If they're not rebuilding new, I think that we can look at helping them, fix facilities to make sure that they're single entry, single exit, so that they're safer. Yakima has a lot of schools that are very decentralized, multiple buildings, multiple openings, so that's one area I would work in. And I think it speaks to a larger concern with how our current funding is for school infrastructure. Right now we focus on, you can only build new for matching dollars. You can't do renovations, remodels, or projected growth. And so I would like to see some changes there to help save school districts money as they go to build. But sorry, that was a little bit of a tangent.
That's okay. So your primary opposition to 1639 is that it would not accomplish the solution that it proposes. Is that
Yeah,
what I
well, the
understand?
first opposition is that I believe it's a violation of the Second Amendment,
Okay.
and it punishes law-abiding gun owners. My second opposition is that it's saying that it's going to create safer schools, but I don't believe that's the case.
Okay.
The other initiative that I think is, again, it's claiming to solve a problem that it's not actually going to solve is 1631, the climate change initiative. It's being called a fee, not a tax. Both are 3 letters. Both have the same effect on your wallet. They take money out.
So for the viewers who might not be aware of what that is, can you explain?
Yeah, so 1631
That
is...
has less visibility than
Yes,
the other one.
yes, especially in eastern Washington. I know there's been a lot of talk about 1639. 1631 is a carbon fee. It is heralded as a way to punish big polluters, but when it comes down to it, we, the citizens, are going to be paying for it. Well, it's going to be initially, they've said 16 cents a gallon and higher gas taxes initially, and it's going to charge additional fees, costs on your heating. So for those that drive a car or try to heat their house here in Central Washington, they're going to be paying more. And all it does is grow government. It creates new administrations, and it doesn't solve the problem.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
Yes, I
Just kidding.
So just go over both
Sure.
initiatives.
Yeah, or any other point that you wanted to raise that we might not have brought up for you.
Well, I think I should respond,
Sure.
just so we have both voices out there. So for 1639, the first part is, so Washington State has 2 classifications of guns, hunting rifles and pistols. It's moving semi-automatic weapons from hunting rifles to pistols. The second part is the secure storage, and that's because the majority of gun deaths are actually suicides and accidents. And so it's just trying to go after how to limit suicides and accidents. So I'm in support of this bill. I'm also a supporter of the Second Amendment, though my opponent doesn't believe that. I really am. I have gun owners in my family, and friends, obviously, and I support the Constitution, and I will protect the Constitution. But there's limits on all of our rights. I cannot, swear on TV, for example. So what's the facts are is that the people, even in this district, which might seem very conservative, which it's not, it's actually moderate, is actually ahead of our legislature for gun safety laws. So it's actually our representatives who aren't listening to the people and putting those laws into, we voted 52% for the extreme risk protection orders, and that's taking a gun away from someone. So this is a divisive issue. It's meant to divide us and make us as partisan as possible. I want to try to just focus on the facts of it and bring us together and say, are these some small steps that we can take to try to make our public safety more of a concern for all of us? For 1631, it could be a carbon fee or a carbon tax, but that's in the business's hands. The business can choose to, instead of pay the fee, to invest in clean energy. So I don't want us to make millions from this, because that means there's still millions of carbon in the air. The idea is to limit carbon and invest in clean energy. So I want those businesses to use that fee to invest in clean energy. The pump storage project could use $1631 because it's a clean energy project. So these are practical, local applications of 1631 that will help us be from carbon-based to clean energy-based, and we can be the first state to do it. We know it's coming, so why not start that process now?
Okay. And from there, did you want to respond?
I have a response, but I don't know how much longer we want to keep talking.
We'll give you each one more chance to talk.
Okay. Well, my argument would be that Washington is currently one of the cleanest energy producing states out there, between our, hydroelectric and other sources. To the first point, it's not an anti-suicide or accidental handgun death bill. It's a bill that is going to restrict rights for 18 to 20-year-olds. It's going to enforce more government oversight and overreach into law-abiding gun owners' lives. Obviously, nobody wants accidental deaths and suicides, and we would like to prevent that as much as possible. But law-abiding gun owners already protect their guns. They already put them away. Or maybe there is a case here and there where an accident happens. We already have laws on the books to address those. And so we don't need more laws, and we don't need more punitive damages on those. And the term assault rifle is being used so broadly that a lot of rifles that most hunters use out there would now classify as an assault rifle, and you wouldn't be able to take your son or daughter out hunting with those guns because they couldn't legally own them. So it's not, again, it's saying it's about school safety. It's not saying it's about suicide prevention or accidental gun deaths. And it just proposes a whole new list of what I think are inappropriate ordinances on law-abiding citizens.
Okay.
So he mentioned that we're, really great at clean energy, but we spend billions of dollars on out-of-state carbon. So if we have clean energy in our state, we will save billions of dollars.
How does that work? That we spend that much money on out-of-state carbon?
Yeah, we have to bring oil in.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And then the second part is that's a lot of rhetoric that doesn't really mean anything. I already explained as clearly as possible what this bill means, and people should read it and try to decide for themselves. Because there's attempts to divide us on this issue, and I think there are so many opportunities we should come together, and this is one of them. Regardless if this passes or fails, I want to talk to everyone and listen to everyone about the steps that they think are necessary. I talked to a hunter yesterday, and he explained that some hunting rifles will go into the pistol category, and his sons won't be able to shoot that weapon till they're 21. So that's a new thing I heard, but we have to draw a line somewhere. So I'm still comfortable with that line being drawn, and I think we need representatives who will stand up to lobbyists and special interests and focus on the people and our real public safety and the real issues that we face every day.
Sounds like a good jumping off point for further debates and forums. So, let me just express appreciation again for both of you for taking the time, and I especially appreciate the chance to be able to have you sit here and have a civil,
Yeah, absolutely.
respectful conversation. It's refreshing.
Yeah, well, thank
So,
you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.